playing the entire time. So, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it.
So anyone more concerned about us going and having a peaceful disruption of a church service than the reason that they were there needs to check their heart, and they need to check their theology.
Well, as we tried to warn them all week long, it does appear that the Don Lemon endorsed Minneapolis church storming on Sunday was indeed against the law. It was a violation of the FACE Act, and no, Don Lemon, it was never First Amendment protected activity to infringe on other people's First Amendment right to worship and practice their own religion in peace, especially on private property. Now, Don Lemon, quite conveniently, has been using the excuse that he was just there to cover the event as a journalist and he had nothing to do with it, despite the fact that the public record seems to show something different. But nonetheless, the same cannot be said of the left-wing and BLM organizers who staged this entire event to begin with. Thus far, we've seen at least 3 left-wing quote-unquote activists face arrests after it turns out, again, they were not actually within their First Amendment rights. And of course, this week, they've done a whole media tour trying to claim that we didn't do nothing, right? We were just, peacefully there. We were engaging in the church service, all these lies. And then how, of course, has it ended? Seeing these people in handcuffs, although we need to see a lot more because, frankly, I think one of the most important projects of the entire Trump administration ought to be crushing the Soros network, crushing all of this left-wing organized dark money that engages in and sets up a lot of the mass agitation, the crime, the domestic terrorism that we're seeing on our streets. It turns out that, it's not some organic No Kings protest thing that's going on. But nonetheless, we'll bring you this full chronicle here today because apparently the DOJ has tried to bring up multiple charges against the individuals involved in this event. We did have appears to be liberal magistrate judge throw out the Don Lemon one using the excuse of the First Amendment. But again, other left-wing activists have been seen in handcuffs. And ultimately, if you ask me at the end of the day, it's kind of annoying that we always have to deal with this situation in the judiciary. But I would frankly much rather see the actual left-wing NGO and organizer characters out there be arrested than Don Lemon, because Don Lemon himself, who is he? He's just a clown, right? He's just a useful idiot. But we'll tell you about this, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate it. And that said, I want to show you the didn't age well moment as this character right here, Nakima Levy Armstrong, the organizer of the anti-ICE church quote-unquote protest, tried to go on CNN this week to defend her activity, claiming, and I quote, "We did not rush into the church. We sat down and participated in the service."
And I do want to correct something that was said in the beginning. We did not rush into that church. We actually went and sat down and participated in the service. And after the pastor prayed, that is when I stood up and asked him a question in response to his prayer. And then he responded to me. And then I proceeded to ask him about Pastor David Easterwood and how is it possible for him to serve as both the pastor and the director of ICE for Minnesota. And instead of responding to me, as soon as I said the name David Easterwood, the pastor says, "Shame, shame." And that is when I led us in chants, "Justice for Renee Good" and "Hands Up, Don't Shoot." So I want to clarify that. We didn't rush in. We didn't bust in. We were a part of the service until I got up and posed that question to the pastor.
All right. And obviously, I'm not going to dispute your saying what happened. I'm merely describing how CNN is describing it. I obviously wasn't in the room. But that moment that you're talking about, and obviously the way you lay it out could dramatically affect things. But the moment you talk about justice.
So they were just there to participate in the church service, apparently. They were sitting down peacefully and respectfully. They weren't causing a problem. They didn't storm into the church. Notice how, by the way, even the CNN anchor has to do a double take because she's like, wait a minute, that's not even our own reporter's understanding of the events. And if you watch even the Don Lemon live stream and all of this, it's pretty clear that the entire thing was pre-planned, pre-coordinated. And no, the goal was never just to go in and sit down and participate in the church service. But even if we are to believe that her narrative of the events is true, I think that's highly contradicted by the fact that we do seem to see a lot of videos of them clearly not participating in the church service, certainly not sitting down or just peacefully minding their own business. So keep in mind, right, that was her excuse. We didn't do nothing. We were just engaging in the church service. And then, ladies and gentlemen, here is, of course, the reality.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No! Jesus would die within it. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't. Don't be.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Shame. Out now. Out now.
Yeah, but totally, just sitting down and engaging in the church service, right? First of all, where even is the sitting down if you're running up to all the members of the congregation and screaming in their face? And by the way, I'd have to argue, even a video like this right here does appear to dispute her chronicle of events that she came in and sat down and actually engaged in the protest, because actually, no, we do seem to have evidence of them indeed storming into the church exactly as widely was initially described.
Renee good! Renee good! Renee good! Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities?
You have to love the spin, because that video right there very clearly demonstrates just how much the didn't do nothings were lying about the actual situation. But being original BLM activists from Minneapolis in 2020, why should we be surprised? I mean, this is the situation in every single case, you know? Oh, we just got harassed and kicked out of this church for absolutely no reason. Okay, first of all, even if it's true, which maybe it does appear that she kind of went in to be a plant in the church and then stood up, you can clearly see the mob of her fellow activists. Indeed, what are they doing? Storming into the church, storming to the front to cause a ruckus. You can literally see the video of them walking up to the front of the church while the service is going on. So I have to assume, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't just pick seats there at the beginning when it was opening. No, they came up to the front. That's why we're saying you stormed into the church, number one. Secondly, you notice how in her original CNN interview, she sits there and tries to say, oh, the pastor just said shame on me for asking a question. No, actually, the pastor sat there and listened to your question. He started saying shame when your mob of fellow agitators decided to show up and then were then screaming and shutting down the church service. And you can see clearly on video, right? That's when the pastor says shame. So in other words, what are the typical BLM didn't do nothings lying about this entire situation? That's exactly what they're doing. Totally misrepresenting, right? Totally just pretending as if they're completely innocent. They didn't do anything wrong. And of course, let us not forget the Don Lemon excuse for all of this, which is that it was what, ladies and gentlemen? Free speech and First Amendment, a protected activity, which of course we know it was not.
This is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution, when you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the civil rights movement was about, The civil rights movement was about these very kinds of protests. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt. It's to make uncomfortable. And that's what they're doing. And that's what I believe when I say everyone has to be willing to sacrifice something. You have to make people uncomfortable in these times. If you see how uncomfortable people uncomfortably. What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
but there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, what's happened ever since is that these agitators have had to find out the hard way that indeed the Don Lemon legal advice here was not correct. They were not engaging in First Amendment protected activity. And no, the legal system does not believe there didn't do nothing account of events where they were just sitting down and peacefully engaging in the church service, which is why we've seen thus far at least 3 separate arrests of the agitators involved. And that includes right here, St. Paul school board member. That's right, a member of the local school board being perp-walked after engaging in storming that Minnesota church with Don Lemon. For as one example, take a look at this video.
Lockup's in there. We'll bring her in. She'll stand off to the side. I know this only because I just did it once.
Now, I think my favorite part of this video is the fact that they actually had to use 2 handcuffs to detain her. Did you guys notice that? They actually had to attach handcuffs to each other just to get it to fit. But yeah, certainly a very large development in this legal case, to say the least, right? Is there actually room for her in the jail? We don't know. But anyways, it does not stop there. We also saw an arrest of this guy right here, right? You may recognize him from the video where he's screaming in the faces of churchgoers, including little children, and generally having the demeanor of an insane Antifa terrorist. And there you have it. He, of course, is the same guy who dared Pam Bondi to arrest him. Well, that is indeed what has happened. And of course, let us not forget, Miss Didn't Do Nothing herself. Looks like indeed the argument she made on CNN didn't really ring true, right? She didn't just go to a church service and then stand up respectfully and ask a question. The video record disagrees. She's a dirty liar. And while it might work for, TikTok or might work for CNN, doesn't work when there's forensic evidence in this very legal case that shows the exact opposite of everything that you're describing. So, yeah, how does it feel? Again, after all, it turns out you don't have a First Amendment right to violate other people's First Amendment rights.
I've been thinking about a couple of things. One, last summer, if I were sitting in a church right now in Minneapolis and a bunch of people burst in, I'd be on edge, because last summer a shooter showed up at a Catholic church in Minneapolis and shot a bunch of kids. 2 died. I think 30 people were injured. 26 were kids. And so the terror in that church, I think, is probably warranted, if for no other reason than we've seen radical violence at a church in the not too distant past. We've also seen, I think, attempts to create violence and mayhem and fear in churches around the country, synagogues and other places. And so I feel like the radical left is somewhat emboldened right now to go up to and now into places of worship. It sounds like the FACE Act is what they're going to use. I've also heard today from some sources that the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, they may look at that for bringing charges to Don Lemon and these radical leftists that went into this church. I think if they don't do something to these people who did this, you're going to see it proliferate in churches across the country, and that will be very regrettable.
Here are the full details on that, by the way. So just to be clear, these 3 individuals thus far have been charged. Apparently, the DOJ did also try to bring charges against Don Lemon, but they were tossed out. We'll bring you that full story. So, a federal magistrate judge on Thursday rejected the DOJ's attempt to bring charges against the former CNN anchor Don Lemon in connection with Sunday's anti-ICE protests, because he obviously live streamed the entire thing and tried to tell Lemon that the, quote, freedom to protest is what the First Amendment is all about, despite the fact that he clearly has no actual understanding of the First Amendment or the fact that you can't infringe on other people's rights in order to practice your own First Amendment. So Lemon was expected to face charges after Pam Bondi had warned that no one was above the law. To make a long story short, here's what happened. Quote, the magistrate's reported actions confirmed that the nature of Don's First Amendment protected work this weekend in Minnesota as a reporter. So, of course, that's the journalism angle. I was just following them in. I wasn't involved in it. It was no different than what he has done for more than 30 years, reporting and covering newsworthy events. I'm just a journalist, etc., etc. And by the way, that's what he even tried to say at the time. Although, frankly, it is what it is. Like, he is obviously of a protected class because not only is he a quote-unquote journalist, he is a famous liberal. So you know how it goes in trying to do this type of stuff. But I would like to point out for the record that I think when you actually look at the video, there's pretty clear evidence he was a little bit more than just a neutral journalist who had just followed them in because he saw something was happening. Actually, he had clear forewarning of what was going on, and you can clearly see by the nature of his coverage, was actively trying to help these people. Take a look.
The MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, what's her name? Something Hammett. Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protest at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And we all have the address, right?
Yes.
Everybody has the address?
So they're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. That is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But there we go. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go. Okay. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here.
Okay,
Thank you guys.
Okay.
How are you? Good to see you. We're on. We're not saying what it is, what's going on, but thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
So
This is Nakima Levy Armstrong. She's on the show on Friday.
Levy Armstrong, civil rights attorney, longtime activist here in the community. And, we protest and do activism in all kinds of ways. This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual.
Okay, so you claim that you have no idea who these people or this organization is, and you're just following them around with a microphone, and yet somehow you manage to magically stumble upon their meeting place. You seem to know the person running the organization. As a matter of fact, she's going on your show, but it was all just a coincidence, apparently, right? How can you not know who these people are, but clearly somehow know the person in charge? By the way, it does appear, Don Lemon, that you were tipped off or invited to this very thing. because I don't know how you would magically run into their staging ground. I don't know. Did you just happen to be at a Walmart parking lot and you just ran into these people? Seriously doubt that that's true. That's ridiculous. We see you, by the way, on camera, actively, trying to not just being friendly with these people, way friendlier than you are, for instance, with the pastor, but even trying to protect them. Hey, let's protect the details of this. I'm not going to show the camera because I want to hide the planning of this protest beforehand. All of this does appear to be a little more than just, oh, we didn't know what was happening. We just followed them inside and I was just being a journalist, right? I mean, we know obviously what team here Don Lemon is on, but, the story there doesn't appear to be all that believable. But, nonetheless, it is what it is, right? Don Lemon gets off easy this time. You know how that stuff goes. I would once again just say that as long as we see the actual organizers here, the NGOs, right? Not the useful idiots like Don Lemon, okay? Don Lemon's just a clown. But the actual people who say that their personal agenda and their business is to go in and disrupt business as usual, and these people are, organizing all the agitation, they're the real threat here. And so as much as I'd like to see Don Lemon also face consequences, if you can just get these people, it's at least something of a victory, right? But anyways, there you essentially have it. Again, looks like the whole First Amendment excuse didn't go so well for these people. That said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.